contamination with a third effort?
No, I don't think we can say either way. But to get to your earlier question, one would like to know not only timing but exact procedures. Who did what, when, where, and exactly what were the protocols used in sampling, in processing the samples, and in then conducting and analyzing the results of the assays. So remember, the second and the third mission, we're told, were separated by between May and November of 2004. We have no information about what might have happened in between.
I'm going to read a question emailed in from a journalist watching on the web. Dan Vergano from USA Today is asking, what does it mean that the FBI and/or Department of Justice did not provide written statements of their scientific conclusions? Was this requested, and why did they tell you they would not provide them, if so?
We asked repeatedly for a written summary of their conclusions. We were not given a written summary. We had many discussions with them, and for written evidence of their conclusions, we relied on the Department of Justice investigative summary, which has statements you'll see quoted in that first table in the summary. I can't speak to why that was, but the statements made in the investigative summary speak for themselves.
Next question.
Gwyneth Zacabe, Nature News. I'm wondering what the committee's reaction was when the Department of Justice closed the case last year.
As you may know or surmise, we weren't privy to any of the discussions about when or why the case might be closed, or certainly the reasons leading up to the actual closure in February of last year. We know that many considerations go into a decision like that, much of it involving portions of the investigation about which we had very little involvement and certainly no role in judging. So we noted with due interest.
Next question. Carol Craddy from CNN. There was a little bit in the report about collection dealing with the Flight 93. Could you talk a little bit about that? And also the fact that classified information was not part of the findings, if I understand it correctly. What kind of impact would that have on saying how definitive your report is?
We have very little, almost no information on the Flight 93 work. Again, just a mention of the fact that they did examine remains from a hijacker in Flight 93. We repeatedly asked for all the available and relevant information. In our interactions with the FBI in December of this year, they discussed the opportunity or possibility of reviewing classified information. We're determined to complete this report in a timely way, to provide information that would be available to the public, and all the materials we have received are available to the public. And we were really finished with our charge, so we were not in a position to take on that work now, and that's why we've made a recommendation that a review of the classified materials be carried out.
Let me, if I could just add, the mention made of the classified materials in November by the FBI was the first mention to us. I think we certainly were prepared and willing to review such materials had they been made available earlier.
To the FBI or DOJ, and what reception have you gotten?
We have given them the report and briefed them on its contents, and they received it with some appreciation for the work that the committee put in, and I can't comment on their response.
With the Washington Examiner. given the rates of mutation within anthrax and the discussions that you had at your prior meetings with the researchers at USAMRIID, can you discuss what other samples what percentage of the samples in the repository might have been able to produce the results that you saw in the letters? And if you might talk about additional testing that would be possible from this day forward?
As you know, the FBI and its collaborators selected 4 specific mutations as the basis for testing the repository samples that they had collected. These 4 mutations were discovered in the letters and chosen as the basis for the genetic signature that they would then seek in other samples. From the repository, there were a total of 8 samples that tested positive for all 4 of these genetic mutations. 7 of those 8 were said to have come from Flask RMR 1029 at USAMRIID. The 8th sample was located at Battelle Memorial Institute in Columbus, a collaborator of workers at USAMRIID, and we were told that the FBI had clear evidence that that sample, that 8th sample, had itself come from USAMRIID and from 1029. So there were 8 out of the complete repository that had the full set of 4 positive results.
Check this mic. Oh, we're back on.
The FBI asked you to do this for them. Did they explain why only at the end of the process they found this new material and what prompted them to find it? What was the sequence of events that led them to bring this to you, considering that they'd already provided a lot of material? I mean, did they withhold this from you?
All I can say is we repeatedly asked for all relevant materials. We were offered this material in November of 2010, offered to see additional material and have additional briefings after the FBI had reviewed our first draft report and found it would be improved by our understanding and knowing more. And it's hard to turn your back on additional information when you're trying to write a very factual report. And so it was after considerable consideration that we decided to take it on.
Next question.
Bob Oregon from CBS. Can I take you back to the last question about the mutations in the 8 samples? If I read this correctly, I think there were 30 tests done on the Flask RMR 1029. Is that correct? And 16 times you found all of the mutations, but in the other 14 times there were a variance. Can you explain how that can be when the samples are coming from the same flask? How are you getting different results? And what does that say, if anything, about the certainty or lack of certainty that the letter material came from the flask?
The work that you referred to, the 30 resamplings of Flask 1029, was a separate set of experiments that were undertaken by the FBI and their collaborators to understand how